Have you ever wanted to play Mike Tyson's Punch Out, but you just so happen to be 20 years too young for that, hate 16-bit graphics, and love the Wii? Well, boy do I have a game for you. And it just so happens to have some animal cruelty, too. We'll get there, though. Just stick with me. This is Punch Out Wii, objectively the best entry in the Punch Out franchise. If you disagree with me, that's okay.
Hey, great work,
Everybody's
Mac.
wrong sometimes.
Now let's take down the next
He plays a
circuit.
17-year-old boxer from the Bronx named Little Mac, who is noticeably undersized compared to the rest of his competitors. Little Mac is looking to make his way up the WVBA World Championship ladder. To do so, he needs to climb his way through 3 different circuits of progressing difficulty and uniqueness, facing off against fighters from all around the world. The only other character that I would really consider a main character is Doc Lewis. He's Mac's mentor, and he is also a former World Heavyweight Champion of the WVBA. Now that we've covered literally the entire story of the game, we can kind of cut to the chase. If you don't know what I do here, I 100% complete games. This is a series called The 100. I rank every game that I 100% on a scale of 0 to 100. It's pretty self-explanatory. Let's get into it. Okay, so our first completion requirement is going to be going through the 3 circuits, top to bottom, beating all the boxers. I'll go through each one as we go, but this is really going to be the simplest part of the entire run, so we won't spend too much time on it. Okay, so first up, we've got the minor circuit. The first fight you do is Glass Joe. He's a Frenchman who is terrible at boxing, and he's French. That's basically it. Number 2, you got Von Kaiser. He is German. He's a boxing instructor for little kids. He gets beat up by little kids. Third one is Disco Kid. He's just a guy that still thinks it's the 70s, I guess. And King Hippo is maybe a guy, maybe not a guy, maybe an animal. Nobody knows where he's from. He's fat. If you've never played this game before, King Hippo, he might beat you a couple times before you figure out how to beat him, but really, none of these fights are too bad, and considering that I played this game religiously as a child, I had no problems. We cruise through the minor circuit, and now we are on to the next circuit, which is the major circuit. In the major circuit, we've got 4 more boxers. The first one is Piston Hondo. He is just a Japanese guy who's pretty good at boxing. Then you've got Bear Hugger from Canada. He trains with a bear in the woods in Canada. Number 3, you've got Great Tiger. He is from India. He is also a magician. Not a very good one. And then for the champion fight, you've got Don Flamenco, a ladies' man who punches bulls.
10 knockout. 10 knockout. 9 10 knockout.
Just like the minor circuit, that really wasn't too bad. Now that we're a major circuit champion, we can move into the big leagues with the world circuit. So, unlike the first 2 circuits, the world circuit actually has 5 competitors. The first of which being Aaron Ryan from Ireland. He is your stereotypical dirty fighter. Then you've got Soda Popinski from Russia. He is a soda addict, but it's heavily implied that it's not really soda. Then you've got Bald Bull from Turkey. He is just kind of a human wrecking machine. Then you've got Super Macho Man, your celebrity boxer, your Logan Paul of the Punch-Out world. And then you've got the champion, Mr. Sandman, who is easily the most intimidating and best fighter out of all of them. Similar to what I said about King Hippo in the minor circuit, if you've never played this game, this entire circuit could really give you some problems, but because I've played this game so much, it really wasn't an issue. Now that Little Mac is the champion of the minor, major, and world circuit, it's time to move on to bigger and better things. Okay, so now we're about to enter where the game starts to actually get kind of difficult, and where my expertise from playing this game as a child isn't really going to help me, because my little pea-brain thought that after you beat Sandman, the game was over. So I never really played Title Defense all that much. I probably did once or twice, but I never made it that far. So this is kind of new to me, at least generally. The whole gimmick of Title Defense is that you fight every competitor that you fought so far, except there's a new added twist to each competitor, whether that be them literally straight up cheating or just them getting better at boxing. One way or another, every fight is harder. And the difficulty increase showed right away. I lost twice to Glass Joe immediately. Unfortunately, I don't have the footage for that because I just straight up forgot to record. I beat Von Kaiser and Disco Kid with no problems, and I lost to King Hippo one time. So exiting the minor circuit of title defense, I had a record of 17-3. Okay, now heading into major circuit of title defense, I know I'm kind of speeding through what seems like the meat and potatoes of the game, which I kind of am, but I promise there is going to be so much more to talk about with all these characters once we're done with title defense. So, in major circuit of title defense, I almost lost to Piston Honda. I just barely didn't. I managed to pull through pretty much thanks to a well-timed Star Punch. Bear Hugger didn't really give me any problems. I've never had any problems with Bear Hugger really, but he does have a lot of health, so this was my first win by decision. Great Tiger did manage to take me out once before I was able to beat him, but on my second try I beat him, took my belt back, and we moved on. Pretty similar to Great Tiger, Don Flamenco took me 2 tries to beat, but it did actually come down to me having to wait him out, and I got my win by decision on this one. Now, entering World Circuit of Title Defense, we don't have a fight that's necessarily actually that hard. Aaron Ryan is pretty simple, even though I didn't remember the mechanics at all. I beat him on my first try. It was no problem. I really wish I could say the same thing about Soda Popinski, but it took me 6 tries to beat him, which maybe doesn't sound like all that much, and looking into the future a little bit, it really isn't going to sound like that much pretty soon, but it's the first fight in the game that really feels very challenging. So coming off of what was easily the hardest fight in the game so far, we got a fight that is, in my opinion, way harder. So many people consider Soda Popinski title defense to be one of the most difficult fights in the game, but for me, title defense Bald Bull is so extremely difficult, it makes me want to rip my hair out. It took me 6 tries to beat Soda Popinski, which probably was about 25-30 minutes, maybe even less than that, I'm not exactly sure. It took me like 2.5 hours to beat Bald Bull for the first time, and I can't even tell you how happy I was when I finally did it. After getting through Bald Bull, I can only imagine what kind of nasty two-faced monster is waiting for me with title defense Super Macho Man, but I beat him on the first try. He was not very hard. I don't know what kind of difficulty curve this is, but I hate Bald Bull so much. Now we've got Mr. Sandman, the big bad of the whole game, the final boss, with his Dreamland Express quick jabs and hard-to-read animations. Unfortunately for him and his Dreamland Express, I don't have dreams anymore. My nightmares are haunted by Bald Bull and his stupid Bull Rush. So it took me about an hour to beat him. It wasn't too hard, but it also wasn't easy. I wouldn't expect it to be easy, but it was easier than Bald Bull, so I'm mad about it. So, now that we've beaten all the fighters normally, and all of their title defense modes, we can pop open a bottle of champagne and celebrate our victory. Except, not that at all, because the hard part of the game is just beginning. So, you see, once you've beaten every character, you can face them in exhibition mode, and with exhibition mode comes with challenges. So there are 3 challenges associated with every character. When you complete a challenge associated with a character, it earns you a star. So, to 100% complete the game, we need to get 3 stars on every character. And honestly, most of the challenges are pretty easy. Most of the challenges are find a certain number of ways to get star punches, or defeat within a certain time limit, or defeat after a certain time limit, things like that. Pretty easy. Defeat within the first round, find 1-punch knockout spots. Pretty simple. Some of the challenges are ridiculously hard. Not necessarily even because the challenges are hard, but sometimes just because the characters are difficult. Bald Bull. So, as for the first set of challenges, honestly none of them are very difficult. I'm kind of going to skip through this first period of challenges. We'll get into it once we get into the title defense challenges. Those ones can get pretty difficult, and we've got a lot to talk about there. But in terms of these first ones, we're kind of just going to skip through them. You've seen me fight all the fighters before, and there's not a lot more to it than that. Alright, now that that's out of the way, none of those challenges really took very long at all. The only one that gave me a little bit of problems was, take a guess, it was Bald Bull. But even then, it wasn't that bad. So we can move on to the title defense challenges. So in terms of the first set of challenges for Disco Kid, Von Kaiser, Glass Joe, and King Hippo, none of them really gave me any problems. I lost the footage for when I beat Glass Joe apparently, but It is what it is.
Okay, so now we kind of move into the first character who I would say gave me a problem. I'm using that term kind of loosely because it wasn't necessarily super difficult, but it did take me a long time just because each of the challenges I had to complete individually. Or I say I had to complete them individually, I probably didn't, but I did end up completing them individually rather than like some other characters where I could go through and do multiple challenges over one attempt, and maybe I get the character done in 1, 2, or 3 attempts, something like that. With Piston Honda, it took me probably 3 or 4 attempts to complete each challenge, and I did each challenge individually. The rest of the circuit honestly didn't take me too long, but Piston Honda took me a little while. But otherwise, the major circuit of title defense was fairly unremarkable. So now at this point, we've got all the challenges done for the regular circuits, all 3 of them, and we've got all the challenges done for minor circuit and major circuit of title defense, and we are beginning to encroach on easily the most difficult part of the entire game. First up, we've got Aaron Ryan, which luckily, like his other counterparts, it really wasn't too bad getting the challenges done, which is great because the ones up next I can't really say the same for. Alright, so next up we've got Soda Popinski, and that challenge at the top there, land 15 punches in a stun, that one is not easy at all. Luckily, the other 2 aren't really that bad, but the 15 punches in a stun took me a little while. Longer than I wanted it to, longer than I thought it was going to, but still not that bad. Okay, so next up we've got the easiest character in the entire game and my most favorite character to play against, Bald Bull. And obviously, that was sarcasm. I hated doing this. I don't know why, but the one where I had to time a star punch to hit his bull rush and knock him down with a star punch while he's in his bull rush, I could not get the timing right for so long, and I do not know why. Because honestly, the regular bull rush, like with a normal punch, I can get like almost every single time. But with a star punch, I couldn't get it. It tormented me for hours. However, as a side note, it still did not take me as long as it took me to beat him regularly the first time. So now that Bald Bull is out of the way, and I officially never have to fight him ever again, which is so relieving, we move into Super Macho Man, who, his challenges were fairly rudimentary, pretty run-of-the-mill. They weren't too bad. The final one that I did, it was basically just, you have to beat him perfectly, but it's not a super hard fight, so that wasn't really a problem. So now we move on to Mr. Sandman Title Defense. I was under the impression that once I beat Mr. Sandman in Title Defense mode, that would be the last time I would have to fight anybody. We would move on. I could start processing the video and editing, but that was not how it worked, but we'll get to that. For right now, we'll talk about Mr. Sandman. I was expecting him to be like the penultimate challenge of the whole thing, but honestly, it really wasn't that bad, and it's still never going to be more difficult than Bald Bull somehow, so here it is. As far as the challenges go, I really wasn't worried about the first one, but coming back from almost being knocked out and still beating Mr. Sandman, as well as knocking him down in under 33 seconds, I thought were going to be really tough. Luckily for me, they actually weren't all that bad, and I got them done in under an hour, I think. So, at this point in my head, I had completed the game, and all the problems that I had had with certain characters were absolutely overruled by how accomplished I felt once I finally beat them, Bald Bull included. I definitely was happy with this game, but then I realized that I wasn't even done, and I would soon realize that I wasn't even close to done. As I was sitting in the exhibition screen, admiring my achievements, I flipped through and realized I could flip through one more time. And there lies Donkey Kong. It's where the animal cruelty comes in that I talked about earlier. This was, at the time, a really cool secret boss at the end of the game that I didn't realize was in there, and that I had never found as a child, and that was very cool. I was very happy when I found that, but that didn't last very long at all. In my first few fights with Donkey Kong, I was really getting schooled. It was making me question everything that I knew about Punch Out and making me question my credibility to even be making this video in the first place. However, I ultimately decided that it would be smarter if I tried to not only beat Donkey Kong, but also complete his challenges while I was beating him, so that I didn't have to beat him and then beat him again and beat him again and beat him again and beat him again. Hypothetically, I could try and get it all done at once. While in hindsight, I think that was the right move, it still took a very long time. Up to this point, Bald Bull title defense, the first time I fought him, has been the thing that took me longer than anything else. It took me about 2.5, 3 hours to beat Bald Bull. This made that look like a cakewalk. To defeat Donkey Kong for the first time and complete all his challenges, it took me about 8 hours, which wasn't fun at all. I'm currently playing the entire Donkey Kong fight in the background while I'm talking, and just so that you understand how annoying this was, every time I punch, dodge, or get hit on purpose, it's all deliberate and it's all 100% necessary to get the challenges done. And on top of that, every single time that I throw a punch, it has to be frame perfect, at least from my understanding. I did look it up to check, but I couldn't find anything saying whether or not it had to be frame perfect or not, but it definitely feels like it. As I said with the other characters, everything I did in this game up to this point felt rewarding. But with this, it didn't feel like that at all, to be honest. I just couldn't wait to get this fight over with. I wasn't having fun anymore. I didn't feel like I was solving a puzzle. I didn't feel like I was getting better at the game. It just felt like I was getting lucky enough to have frame-perfect inputs every single time that I needed to until eventually I ended up beating Donkey Kong. That being said, now that it's over with, we can get to my favorite part of the video, which is actually giving the game a ranking. I'm going to be doing the ranking system a little bit different than I have in the last few videos. If you're one of the 6 people that watched the first 3 videos I made, congratulations, it's changing already. Because I just don't think it's fair to certain games the way that I was ranking them. And Punch Out is also going to get 2 rankings. One with Donkey Kong and one without Donkey Kong. Because Donkey Kong absolutely tanked the score of this entire game. The way that I'm going to be ranking the game is more based on feel, enjoyment, and completability, rather than rigid guidelines that I was following before, which I don't think does service to games like Portal and even Punch Out like I would hope it to. I'll probably do a re-ranking of the 3 games that I've already done, or the 4 games that I've already done in the future, but that'll be another thing for another day. So for now, if you decide that you do want to complete Punch Out, without considering Donkey Kong being a factor at all, I'm going to give the game a 75. Obviously out of a total possible score of 100. I think that the game is lacking maybe more completion rewards. You don't get a lot for it, and you could argue that Donkey Kong himself is a completion reward, but considering that my experience with Donkey Kong was miserable, that doesn't add much. However, if you're going to factor in Donkey Kong to the completion of the game, I'm giving it like a 50, because I'm pretty sure that it took years off my life, and I do not have to explain myself for that. Throughout the course of making this video, I took a lot of hits, and I got back up from all of them. Another hit I could take is if you were to just hit the subscribe button. It would do a lot for me. You made it this far in the video, and I would really appreciate it. Next up, we've got Hades. I'll see you over there in the next one, hopefully. I appreciate you making it this far, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.